I think there were three big things which went wrong for us. One was, of course, at the start, the partition. The second was the delay in exercising the nuclear option. And the third was the delay in the economic reforms. So, China not only did not get partitioned, actually China grew in this period territorially.
To what degree do you think India's economic failures, especially during the first 4 decades, limit our ability to assume a more significant role internationally? And here I want to draw a little bit of comparison with China. Now, China was also during these decades kind of as much of failure as India was economically. Yet it seems that somehow China was able to pull its weight a little more than we were able to.
That's an understatement, but yes. No, seriously, I mean, they are today 5 times your economy.
Yes.
So I think it's more than a little more.
But even if we look back, pre-2000, let's say, or pre-1995, at least one gets the sense that the Chinese were able to pull their weight in those decades a bit more than we were able to. Why was there this difference, even though we were a democracy and the Chinese were obviously an authoritarian?
I think there were three big things which went wrong for us. One was, of course, at the start, the partition. The second was the delay in exercising the nuclear option. And the third was the delay in the economic reforms. So, China not only did not get partitioned, actually China grew in this period territorially. China exercised its nuclear option early, 1964. We did a half-hearted move in 74. We did it, but we didn't do it. So we had to do it all over again in 98. And that's 74 was tough enough, but by the time you stretched it to 98, you actually created a big burden on yourself and also allowed Pakistan to catch up in that period. And of course, for me, the most serious was really the economic reform, because if you look, China, you can say, embarked on its economic reform pretty much after Mao died. And so by 1980, 79, China was very clearly set on a course of economic reform. It took us another decade plus. But there's a very big difference also. Here's the paradox. Precisely because China, in a sense, was during the Cultural Revolution period, the Great Leap Forward Cultural Revolution period, China pretty much it did itself so much economic damage during that period that there were no vested interests left by the time the late 70s came, who bitterly opposed those reforms. So, in a sense, once the Chinese leadership said we are going down this path, because they were in a worse situation than they were, it was easier for them and more decisive for them to go down that path. In our case, we delayed it by a decade plus. Then there were interests which kind of continued that debate and slowed down that reform. So we never had that sort of clean slate ability to progress with China. So it's not just China had a head start of a decade. China also had a pathway which was much more obstacle-free than it was for us.